Imagine living in a world where almost everything around you feels uncertain. The wind moves through the narrow streets, and no one is quite sure where it begins. A sudden illness appears, and its cause is not always clear. A strange sound echoes in the night, and there are no easy explanations. In the Middle Ages, the world was not always understood through science or clear answers. Instead, it was experienced through belief, not loud or dramatic belief, but quiet, ever-present ideas that shaped how people saw everything around them. As you walk through a medieval town, everything may seem familiar at first. The wooden houses, the uneven roads, the soft glow of candlelight in the evening. But beneath this calm surface, there is another layer, something less visible, yet deeply felt. A way of understanding the world that fills the spaces between what can be seen. People did not always separate the ordinary from the unknown. Instead, both existed together, side by side. A shadow in the corner of a room might feel just as meaningful as the objects in the light. A sudden change in weather could carry more than just natural explanation. A simple misfortune might be understood as part of something larger, something unseen. These ideas were not rare. They were part of daily life, passed quietly from one person to another, shared through stories, habits, and small, repeated actions. There was no need for proof, no need for certainty, only a sense that the world was filled with things that could not always be explained directly. And so, people created ways to understand it, through beliefs, through traditions, through quiet interpretations of the unknown. Tonight, we'll gently explore some of these ideas, not as something distant or strange, but as a natural part of how people once experienced their world. A time when the unseen felt close, when explanations were shaped by imagination, tradition, and shared understanding. So take a moment to relax. Let the noise of the present fade, and step slowly into a quieter way of seeing the world, where not everything needed to be explained, and where belief filled the spaces in between. As you continue walking through the quiet medieval town, the calm surface of daily life begins to reveal something deeper, not something visible, but something felt, a way of understanding the world that fills the gaps between what can be seen and what cannot. In a time without modern explanations, people often looked for meaning in places that felt just beyond reach, not in a dramatic way, not in constant fear, but in a quiet, everyday awareness that not everything had a clear cause. If something unexpected happened, a sudden illness, a strange sound in the night, or an unexplainable change, people did not always search for a physical reason. Instead, they turned to ideas that helped make sense of the unknown. These ideas were not separate from daily life. They were part of it, as natural as the changing of seasons or the passing of time. You might imagine someone sitting by candlelight, noticing how shadows move along the walls. The shapes shift gently, forming patterns that seem almost intentional, not threatening, just present. And over time, these quiet observations became part of how people interpreted their surroundings. Not everything needed to be seen directly to be understood. Some things were simply accepted as part of the world. As you walk through the town, you may notice small habits that reflect this way of thinking. A person pausing briefly before entering a dark space, another making a simple gesture before beginning their work. These actions are subtle, repeated, almost automatic. They are not performed with urgency, but with quiet consistency, a way of bringing a sense of balance to a world that did not always feel predictable. What is important to understand is that these beliefs were not about constant worry. They were about explanation, a calm way to give meaning to things that did not have clear answers. And in many ways, they made the world feel more understandable, more complete. Because even when something could not be explained directly, it still had a place within the larger picture, a place within belief. As the evening settles in and the light grows softer, these ideas seem to blend even more naturally into the surroundings. The quiet streets, the soft glow of candles, the slow movement of people returning home. Everything feels connected, visible and invisible together, not separated, not in conflict, but existing side by side as part of the same calm world. As the evening grows deeper and the town becomes quieter, another layer of medieval belief begins to appear, not in the open streets, not in the busy market, but in the quieter moments, in the way people observed one another. In a world where many things were not fully understood, attention often turned toward people themselves, not with suspicion, but with quiet curiosity. If someone behaved differently, if their habits seemed unusual, or if their presence felt slightly outside the familiar rhythm of the community, it could begin to carry meaning, not always immediately, but slowly, over time. In small towns, where daily life followed predictable patterns, even subtle differences could stand out. A person who lived more quietly than others, someone who spent time alone, someone whose routines did not fully match the expectations of those around them. These differences were not always seen as negative, but they were noticed. And in a world shaped by shared understanding and tradition, being noticed meant becoming part of a story. Stories were how people explained what they could not fully understand, not through evidence, but through repetition, through quiet conversations, through small details passed from one person to another. And over time, these stories could grow. Not dramatically, but gradually. A simple observation could become a shared idea. An idea could become a belief, and a belief could become part of how the community understood certain individuals. As you walk through the town, you may notice how people interact in subtle ways. A glance that lingers slightly longer than usual. A conversation that lowers in volume as someone passes. A small pause, barely noticeable, yet present. These moments are not intense. They are quiet, almost gentle, but they reveal something important about how people experience their world. Understanding did not always come from direct knowledge. It often came from shared perception, from the way a group collectively made sense of what they saw. And once an idea became part of that shared understanding, it remained. Not loudly, but steadily. It shaped how people interacted, how they interpreted behavior, how they explained the unfamiliar. What is important to remember is that these beliefs were not separate from daily life. They were woven into it. Just like routines, traditions, and expectations, they provided a framework, a way to understand what did not easily fit within the usual patterns. And as the night settles fully over the town and the streets grow still, these ideas seem to soften once more, blending into the quiet, becoming part of the same calm world, unseen, yet always present, in the way people observed, interpreted, and understood one another. As the quiet night settles over the town, and the last sounds of the day begin to fade, another layer of medieval belief slowly becomes visible, not in people, not in places, but in the way events were understood. In a world where daily life could change without warning, people often faced moments that felt difficult to explain. A tool might suddenly stop working. A harvest might not grow as expected. Something carefully prepared might fail. without a clear reason. These were not constant events, but when they happened, they created a quiet question. Why? And in the absence of clear answers, people turned to ideas that could give meaning to these moments, not in a dramatic way, but in a calm, almost practical way, a way to make sense of what could not easily be explained. As you walk through the town, you may notice small reactions to these situations. A pause, a moment of reflection, a quiet adjustment in behavior. These responses are not loud. They are not emotional. They are thoughtful, measured. Over time, certain patterns of thinking began to form. If something unexpected happened more than once, it could begin to feel connected, not randomly, but intentionally. A sequence of events might be seen as part of a larger pattern, a pattern that needed explanation. And so, people developed ways to understand these moments, not through direct evidence, but through interpretation, through shared ideas that helped bring order to uncertainty. These ideas were not always spoken openly. Often, they existed quietly, in the background of thought, guiding small decisions, influencing simple actions. A person might change the way they approach a task, adjust the timing of their work, repeat a small habit that feels protective or reassuring. These actions are subtle, but consistent. They create a sense of control in a world that does not always feel predictable. What is important is not the event itself, but the meaning placed upon it. Because meaning transforms uncertainty into something understandable, something that fits within the larger picture of life. As the night grows deeper and the town becomes still, these quiet interpretations seem to settle into the environment, blending with the silence, becoming part of the same calm rhythm that guides everything else. In this way, belief does not disturb the world. It completes it, filling the spaces where answers are not yet known, and allowing life to continue, smoothly, quietly, without interruption. As the night deepens and the town becomes almost completely still, one final layer of medieval belief begins to emerge. Not from the outside world, not from other people, but from within. From the quiet space of thought, shaped by faith, tradition, and the need to understand one's place in the world. In the Middle Ages, belief was not something separate from daily life. It was woven into everything, into the way people spoke, the way they acted, the way they understood both the present moment and what might come after. Faith provided structure, a sense of order, a way to understand the world not only as it appeared, but as it was believed to exist beyond what could be seen. And within that structure there were also quiet concerns, not loud fears, not constant worry, but a gentle awareness that actions, choices, and thoughts all carried meaning. As you imagine someone sitting alone in a dimly lit room, the soft glow of a candle illuminating only a small part of the space, you can sense this atmosphere, still, reflective. A person might think about their day, about what they said, what they did, whether everything was done as it should have been. These reflections were not rushed. They unfolded slowly, carefully, like everything else in this world. There was a sense that life was part of something larger, something structured, yet not fully visible. And within that understanding, people developed quiet ways of guiding themselves. Small habits, simple routines, moments of pause before action, not out of fear, but out of awareness, a desire to remain in balance with the world as they understood it. As you walk through the silent streets, you may notice how peaceful everything feels, and yet, beneath that calm, there is depth. a sense that each person carries their own thoughts, their own interpretations, their own quiet understanding of how life should be lived. This does not create tension. It creates stillness, because when everything has meaning, even silence feels full. The soft flicker of light, the quiet sound of footsteps, the empty space of a room, all of it becomes part of a larger picture. And as the night continues and the town rests, these thoughts seem to settle gently into the background, not disappearing, but becoming part of the same calm rhythm as everything else. In this way, belief was not something that disturbed life. It was something that shaped it, guided it, and quietly gave it meaning. As the night continues and the world grows even quieter, there is one more way people in the Middle Ages tried to understand what lay beyond their control. Not through people, not through actions, but through signs. Small details, easily overlooked, yet filled with meaning. In a time where the future was uncertain and the world often felt unpredictable, people paid close attention to patterns around them. The movement of birds in the sky, the sudden change in weather, the way animals behaved, even in the smallest ways. These were not seen as random. They were noticed, remembered, interpreted. As you walk through the quiet landscape just outside the town, you might imagine someone pausing for a moment, looking upward. The sky stretches wide and still. Clouds move slowly, and something about their shape, their direction, feels important, not obvious, but meaningful, a sign. In medieval thinking, the world was not silent. It was constantly communicating, through subtle changes, through quiet signals that could be read by those who paid attention. A bird flying alone across the sky might feel like more than just a simple movement. A sudden stillness in the air might carry its own quiet message. Even the smallest detail could become part of a larger interpretation. These ideas were not dramatic. They were calm, thoughtful, a way of bringing structure to uncertainty. If something unexpected happened later, it could be connected back to what was seen before, not as coincidence, but as part of a pattern, a sequence, a quiet narrative unfolding over time. As you continue walking, the world feels more connected. Every sound, every movement, every shift in light, part of something larger, something that could be observed and slowly understood. And in this way, people did not feel lost in uncertainty. They felt guided, not with clear answers, but with gentle hints, soft indications that helped them navigate a world that did not always explain itself. As the night deepens and the sky grows darker, these signs become less visible, but no less present. They remain in memory, in interpretation, in the quiet awareness that the world is always speaking, even when it seems completely still. As the night settles fully and the last traces of movement disappear from the medieval town, everything returns to stillness. The streets are quiet. The windows glow softly with fading candlelight, and the world feels calm, complete, and gently at rest. As you think back on everything you've seen, the quiet beliefs, the subtle habits, the way people interpreted their surroundings, you begin to notice something deeper. This was not a world driven by uncertainty. It was a world filled with meaning. Every sound, every shadow, every unexpected moment, all of it had a place within a larger understanding. Nothing was truly empty. Nothing was without explanation. Even the unknown felt understood, not through certainty, but through belief. And perhaps that is what makes this world feel so distant, and yet so familiar at the same time. Because even today, people still search for meaning, still try to understand what cannot always be explained. Still notice patterns, connections, small details that seem to carry more weight than they first appear. As the medieval town rests in silence, these ideas remain. Not as something loud or overwhelming, but as something quiet, woven into the way people lived, thought, and experienced the world around them. And now, as everything fades into the darkness of night, you can let these thoughts slowly drift away. The narrow streets, the soft light, the calm, thoughtful rhythm of a world guided by belief. Let it all settle gently into stillness and rest as everything becomes quiet once more.